Next question is the production question that I asked last week, which is something that I'm always conscious about when I'm mixing. And I asked you guys, excluding the basics like panning and level, what were some of your kind of key breakthroughs using EQ that you discovered during the production process that really allowed you to achieve clear separation between your instruments and avoid that dreaded overlap of frequencies, which we've already discussed during this show? You know, it's so fundamental to the mixing process that you have that clarity and that all the instruments belong in the same space, but they don't fight each other so much that your ears can't make sense of the separation of those instruments. So here's some of the answers that we got.
Hey guys, Lavalette here. One thing to keep in mind while you're finding clarity through EQ is to cut narrow and boost wide. This will help you retain the uniqueness and the integrity of the sound that you're EQing while getting that clarity. Cheers.
Simple,
Good,
quick fire in there, Lavalette. Really nice. We'll play the next one. This is from Dave.
Hey guys, it's Dave here. So my response to question 1, a breakthrough while using EQ for me, something that really helped me achieve separation, was using dynamic EQs with the external sidechain engaged. So for example, if I had a vocal and a guitar, and the guitar was getting in the way of the vocal a bit, I'd use something like a Waves F6 and put that on the guitar, engage the external sidechain function to receive the signal from the vocal. As and when both of those instruments are playing at the same time, the signal from the vocal would trigger the dynamic EQ, and I would just set it so it's cutting out only the stuff from the guitar that's getting in the way from the vocal. So the benefit of that for me was not having to go in and do lots of automation and not using a compressor with the sidechain function to get rid of all of the guitar. I don't want the whole volume being dug down overall. So yeah, just getting out all the stuff which is causing any clutter, that was really helpful for me.
Top man.
Fundamental, isn't it? Fundamental. That's one of my breakthroughs as well.
Me too.
And yeah, final one now is from Matt Marcy.
Hey, this is Matt Marcy with a quick EQ tip. So the common misconception is thinking that you need to hear the full range of every single instrument. You don't. If your kick's fundamental is between 40 and 60 Hz, for example, give it the space to breathe. Having the sub from an acoustic piano and a high live bass all vying for the same area will not give huge bass by having all of them playing together. High pass and EQ out anything that masks the kick. Then the kick will be easy to hear because that's the only thing in that range.
Yeah.
Spot on.
It's good shout. Good shout as well.
All three of these were spot on. And I mean, when I thought about this, I was like, okay, the first thing I wrote down was, for me, sidechain or dynamic EQ is something that really changed my game, I'd say. As to before, where I was like automating every little spike detail, and Andy and I have spoken about it on the show, possibly every episode, what we would do in our kind of feedback section, what we would do. And when we say I'd put a dynamic EQ and just duck out this, usually we're talking about this sidechain, as Dave said. And it just changed my whole game, I feel, when I learned how to do this. And it took me a while to kind of understand what it is perfectly. But, I used the F6 for probably about a year until I finally fought over the big dog and bought in the FabFilter Pro Q3, which is just no turning back from there. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Dave. Spot on. Matt, again, every word you said, I think people really do tend to think that you need all of the instrument, where you don't. If the frequencies of you don't want the extreme low end in an acoustic guitar, you don't need it. It's going to be fighting the kick and the bass. Same with the piano. But it's all just it's a very cliche answer, but you got to use your ears. And as Lavalette said, where he said cut narrow, boost wide, it's just, for me, it's a case of using my ears. I fight myself when I'm recording to not produce as I go. maybe just little bits here and there to help with the creative process, but the actual mix I don't mix and record at the same time because I just get carried away. So I have, when I have everything recorded, I have a very clear picture in my mind what I'm going to do with things, and can do it relatively quickly because I've got the clear picture. And all three of these answers are go-tos for me.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
over everything, I use my ears, and understanding what Matt said is pivotal. You don't need, first thing I do with most things, low cut, high pass, most things. Every time, if I don't even have to listen to it, I know high pass at 100 hertz. You don't need that sub low end.
Yeah, you don't need that stuff.
But yeah,
Majority.
again, I love these answers, and if you have any, please let us know.
It's funny, so when I started to do the whole, like what Matt Marcy said, like creating that space for the different instruments to not fight each other over, like one of the kind of tutorials and kind of online courses that I did would say like something must win the battle of that space. So you've got to pick like one thing in that occupying area, especially at the low end, which is usually really tough to get that balance between the kick and the bass.
The muddy
and
end,
what I did for a long time, and it was when I was starting to mix, and I made the vital error, which was to kind of high pass everything but like way too much. So I would like take away like completely the low end of like the piano, because I thought, oh, but the bass needs to occupy that whole region. But what I ended up doing was fundamentally removing a lot of the body and what like made the piano sound like the piano, and likewise the acoustic. And that's kind of the similar point that Lavallette's made with the cut narrow and boost wide, because you don't want to like reduce the integrity of the original sound so that it doesn't sound like that instrument anymore. And I made that mistake so much during my like really early mixing learning curve, you know, and I think now like I definitely do what Matt's doing. Like I'll decide based on the song, right, is the bass gonna win or is the kick gonna win? Because they cannot both win here. So if this is like an EDM track, I need that kick to be basically doing the whole breathing in the sub-region. So I'll effectively take the filter on the bass right up to, 100 hertz and leave that space dedicated for the kick, just so that kick is really thick and punchy and present, in that low end. But I don't take away the bass, all the way up to a certain point that you lose what the bass is fundamentally there to do. So yeah, it's a really difficult balancing act. And like you, I used the F6 for a long time, then upgraded to the Pro Q3. Will never look back. And one thing that I do, and I don't know if you do it, Tom, but I always, to create that vocal space, I'll dynamic EQ the fundamental vocal frequency, like timbre region, in my mix bus. So I'll send all my instruments to a separate instrument bus channel, and I'll dynamic EQ that sidechain to my vocal mix bus. So I'll send all my vocals to another bus. And these are my two final buses before I go to my master bus. And this is where I do the majority of creating that vocal space and that treatment, because I've created all that, I've mixed all the instruments and I've created that really thick instrumental mix. But now I need to make sure that fundamentally the vocals aren't getting lost in the track. And
I do the exact same thing. Same thing.
Well, that's good to hear, because, it'll be interesting as well if anyone else has any other kind of techniques or tips that they use. And that might be a standard way that producers do it. I don't know. It's just certainly something that I've picked up over the years. So that's kind of where I was coming from. I was wondering as well if we'd get some listeners who do some stuff with mid and side EQ. I'm still experimenting with my own skills, that kind of region, because a lot of my EQing is just stereo EQing. I don't tend to do much in the form of, mid and side and right side only, left side only. I know producers can do that, do that, but I've never really used that properly, I imagine, to the full advantage. So if anyone out there has that kind of thing, then get in touch with us, because I'm certainly interested to learn more about that kind of thing as well.
Me too. I mean, again, thanks so much for your responses, because
yeah, totally.
Really enjoyed listening to them.
Totally. So, 2 more questions for next week then, Tom.
Cool.
So
you want to ask him away?
Yeah, I'm gonna take off the first one, and I'm gonna do the songwriting question this week. And my question to you guys would be, what do you do when you start a track completely fresh? So what are the first things that you guys do to get your music flowing? And that's what I want to know from a songwriting perspective.
I can't wait for those answers, to be honest. So my question is, how do you tame, this is a production question, of course, how do you tame effects? And what I mean by that is, how do you tame the reverb, the delay, all those effects? How do you tame them so they don't ruin
Overpower.
the track? Yeah, overpower a track. How do you tame them?
Cool. Nice. So we'll put out our posts again, guys. We want, you guys, like-minded songwriters and producers, just to do the exact same. DM us on Instagram at Songwriters Lounge with the wee underscore at the end. Or you can send your full recorded voice note if you're an audio nerd like us and you want to record it on a mic or anything like that. If you don't want to do it on your phone, then you can send it to us to the email address submissions@songwriterslounge.net. And we will then do the exact same. We'll play you on the show, we'll discuss your answers, and it will be brilliant for you to share your knowledge as the songwriter and producer that you are on this show. And, we'll keep the different topics and areas coming. So thank you so much, guys. And we will check you out on episode 11 next week.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
Have a great week, guys. Cheers.